hello and welcome to PM Express. That's the end of the week. We thank God we've seen a week through, and if you're listening, then you just have to thank God. And today we are continuing with land wars, and I'm sure we'll never end with land issues. However, today you are going to join in. We're going to have you call in if you have any complicated land issue that you can't seem to get your finger around. You call into the show, and our in-house expert, we're going to hire him as our in-house land expert. Now we have one educationist, we have one medical. I think this is going to be our in-house land expert. So you call in, tell us what the issue is or what you're confronting, and then you can get an advice. But when we come back, we're going to look at how some land becomes two lands, how some land becomes family lands, and some become state lands, and what are the rules and regulations that come by this confusion. How do you even know you're buying from stew, land, or state, and what should you do? My name is Nana Ansakwa, the fourth chief of Akwamu Edumasa, and clearly you'll be buying stew lands if you're buying from me. So what will be your regulation? Don't go, we're coming straight back. Well, thank you very much for staying, and we're looking at stew lands, family lands, state lands, and we are looking at issues of land guards, which is clearly what is it so dangerous or so frightening that as soon as you buy land, you need macho men to protect it? All will be discussed here. I'm sure if you're in the Kaswa area, you've had such problems, and then you definitely have to call through and get advice as to what to do to secure your land. Timothy Anitoho, Principal Land Officer, Land Commission. He's now going to be our in-house land consultant. So we have conferred upon you PM Express's in-house land consultant.
Thank you very much. I'm honored and humbled.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we'll get to land guards, but in Ghana we have three types of land.
Well, principally we have two types. We have public land, and then we have non-public land. But they are broken down into smaller bits. So when we say public lands, we have two categories. We have state land, purely state land, acquired by government under Article 20 of the Constitution and 125, an act and other enactments. Then we have vested land. This is a split ownership. If you find out in areas where there's a conflict between stools, or the state finds it that for planning purposes, it makes some sense. It lays its hand on it and says, I would manage it, but the revenue goes to the stool.
We have a lot in our area.
Yes,
because of the Volta.
Because of the Volta. And you have some in the eastern region. You have some in the Brown Hafo region, largely. In Accra too, we have some, the Osu area, what we call the Osu Manche layout, which will be near the British Embassy area, also has that same split ownership. So that will fall under public land. Then we have the other category, which will have where your stool land will come in, and family land will come in, individual land will come in. So that's the category of lands that we have in this country.
Now, can you change stool land to family land, or change family land to stool land?
Well, it will be the nature of the control that is in the area. So, i.e., you are a chief of a Dumasa. If some families underneath the Dumasi stool can have a certain claim to a land, and they are able to prove that, maybe it's either by litigation or by the consent of the chief or the traditional area, then that area can be demarcated as a family land. So it will be managed by that family only. So that can happen. If that stool also then becomes subject to a certain, if this family becomes subject to a stool, and they decide that, look, we've given up our ownership, let the stool manage us, that is possible. That is possible to do that.
Okay.
That transfer, yes.
And are there different rules, or are there different ways of purchasing each?
Okay. So, as I said, for the public land, if you are purchasing state land, that would mean that the state has to grant it to you. and the state has certain agencies and actors, i.e. government can acquire land and give it to, say, state housing as a state agency. So even though it's government land, a state housing that is managing it, they would assign it to you. It's the same with maybe TDC land. It's the same with other development agencies that are pseudo-government. Then there's some that are purely government land where Lands Commission itself grants you a lease. So it's state land acquired. The Constitution gives Lands Commission the power to manage it. So if Monday Article 257 going down, manages it and says, okay, so areas in, let's say, prime lands, you find out that in Accra, we can set examples. In Tamale, there are some examples. There are areas where government grants the leases to the individual. So what government does is that it acquires, it lays out the area. It defines where is residential, where is clinic, where is hospital, where is police station. Then it creates the plots. Then it's governed by an LI. Citizens like I and you can just apply to the Lands Commission. They vet that application, and if you are worthy of having it, it's granted to you. So state lands, that's the route. Vested land is the same. The confusion often is that people assume that because it's vested land, the stools still have a certain authority. Unfortunately, it is not so. Government has the authority to grant, and then the stools benefit from it. However, Lands Commission has looked over the years and noticed that it's to get everybody involved and for clarity of mind, it's helpful if the stools have a certain interaction with the commission, and then they can make some considerations. But largely, it's still done by the state. Then if the revenues come, it's given to the stools. Then for stool lands, there's a provision in the Constitution that clearly states what should be done in the case of stool lands. It defines to us that if you want to get a stool land, it must come to the Lands Commission for what we call consent or concurrence. The difference is this. Concurrence is when you are getting straight from the stool. Consent is after you have got it from the stool and Lands Commission has concurred. Now, subsequent transactions you do for a consent, saying the government wants Lands Commission to help the stools know who is staying on this land at every particular time. Then also the revenue out of land like that is managed again by the Constitution Article 266 downwards somewhere. That the administrator of stool lands, which is a constitutional body, takes the revenue, and then the Constitution defines how that revenue is shared. So it's split in a certain way. There's 55% to the assemblies, because the framers of the Constitution were looking at development for the areas. So 55% to the assemblies, 25% to the traditional council, 20% to the authority that is down there. Then there's an administrative charge of 10% for the administrator of stool land. So that's what is done. Unfortunately, for the family land, that equation was not done. So there was a famous judgment, Kluje, in 1980 takes the Lands Commission to court, and the court rules that family land is not the same as stool land. So for family land, you don't need to go through the process that you go through when you are doing stool land. And one critical thing about stool land is that you have to ensure that the land that you have bought conforms to the development plan or a proposed development plan of an area. And this is very critical. If that is affirmed, the Lands Commission will go and they give you the concurrence. If it is not affirmed, Lands Commission can say, we cannot grant you a concurrence because this site doesn't conform to a development proposal. So briefly, that is what the processes are like for that.
But there are areas that don't have any plan.
Yes. So it's a symptom of what we are as a country. Development seems to precede planning. Mm-hmm. So before we came on set, you were showing me certain plans. If the traditional areas or the owners, as they were, can be able to develop proposals which are done by professional planners in this country, then you approach your district assembly. Then you say, look, I have this proposal. The district assembly looks at that proposal and says, it's good, that area is well there, we agree. They can say, okay, we'll amend this area, because they have professional planners at the district assembly also. Once they agree and that becomes an approved layout of the area, it is now a function of the assembly and then the traditional area. The traditional area on its own cannot just change the layout because it's now a public document. Mm-hmm. So if you want to do some change, you apply back to the assembly and say, well, we think this police station, we want to do something about it. They come back, look at it. Oh, there's another police station in that area. They accept it, and then it becomes. But more often than not, traditional areas don't go that way. or individuals don't go that way. What they do is that they go acquire the land. They don't even know whether it's zoned for residential. They just buy it, start developing it, and assume that it's been in the zone. So the advice for landowners, make sure that you do the right thing. If you have it, take the layout and then go to the assemblies to get them approved.
Then it becomes an official document.
Official document of the assembly. Then public, as everybody from the public can go and verify, this plot you are giving to me, is it a residential plot? Yes, it is. Then you may proceed. That is it.
I think the worrying part is that if it becomes an official document, then, as a chief thinks, oh well, then I've lost control of my land.
That public document is affirmed. Your proposal is what the assembly takes in.
Okay.
And the rules for planning, in fact, by the new planning, land use planning law, is that it's supposed to be participatory. So if the assembly also on its own will not just sit in this place and say, oh, I've amended the thing. No, there are rules. And the rules, if you look at the structure of the assembly committees, it's a very wide group. You have representation from Ghana Water, Lands Commission, Electricity, EPA. It's a group. It's supposed to be a large group of professionals looking at it. If they want to do any change of use as it is, they need to come back to the site, talk to the landowners, talk to the neighbors of the area, do some community participation. So landowners should not be afraid that the public documents will mean they lose control. What it means is that it's now affirmed, because it's not your proposal that is what will be accepted. It's what the assembly deems as good. So they should not be afraid at all. I think they should be comfortable in getting the right approvals. And then if they want to change, they still go through the right channels for change.
Timothy, another thing which happens between probably traditional rulers and some state-acquired land is because, maybe land was acquired like 60 years ago before you became chief.
Yes.
And there's those old folk take near dokusi nano near dokusi nano near dokusi. So everybody just think, well, it's part of my land.
Yes.
And so people start selling.
Yeah.
Those on the other side also say, oh, yes, crisscross. But the state never comes in to say, hey, hold on, you're building on this land, you're not supposed to build on it. And the confusion starts. What's
the solution is this. You can't build except you have a building permit. So my first argument is, if the assemblies had the capacity and the personnel, they would prevent anybody from building on that land, because nobody building on that land would have the right documentation. Nobody would have the right permission to develop that same land. So the suggestion, and I believe that we also as state actors have allowed, have not been proactive 100% in the way we've managed land. Let me set certain examples. The Legon land was acquired post-independence by Kwame Nkrumah, far in excess of what Legon as a university may have needed at that time. However, if you look at where Legon is located, developments have gone around it and never touched the Legon land. And there's a model that they do that's a very good model. Every morning, they have estate people who drive around the boundaries of Legon. If you put one block, which is not by their permission, they'll remove it. Now, for other lands that were acquired, i.e. like irrigation projects in the Weja area, if the irrigation authority didn't take possession and then protect it, then it will be there. Lands Commission doesn't have the capacity to do that protection because it's acquiring for agencies. So maybe as government agencies have failed because projects have not taken off, the vision of the acquisition didn't take off, like the Ghana Water at Weja. They never were able to fully do what they were expecting. So there's land left in excess. And under the Land Administration Project 1 and 2, we noticed this. So what we did was working with the agencies to review the acquisitions. If you don't need it, amend your acquisition, return the land back to the people and let them manage their own thing. And that's strongly what the government policy was driving us to. And over the years, there have been some revisions. I can set examples in Ngwa. We have examples in other parts of this country where the acquisitions were reviewed. Animal research, you can't use it. Let's give it back to the schools to manage. And let's manage what we can for state. But state is mindful of the fact that expansions happen. Temamoto Way is now expanding. But these acquisitions we did or just post-independence. And because it was large enough, it can accommodate what we are doing now. Or else, if you amend it too much to the day that state needs to expand, you might not have the land available to do so. So, and those are the challenges that we have.
Maybe this will be brutal, but
yes.
If the state is going to break down every building that doesn't have a permit,
yes.
would it deter people, or that's too brutal?
Well, because of his democracy, and because, remember, our heads of assemblies are also sensitive to the areas that they are. So prevention should be what we should be hoping for, rather than waiting, because I've always been advised that we all might build once in our lifetime. And even if we have many buildings, how many we will live in? Because the cost of construction is quite high. So effectiveness is in prevention. And if we can, the assemblies are well resourced, then they should be able to come. Are you doing your permit from the day? Because buildings don't happen necessarily overnight. So they will do a foundation, they will do something. Stop him there. Ensure that the right thing is done.
But I wonder who produces that red paint. I mean, and it's the same handwriting. I need to do a little research on it. It's the same handwriting, the same paint.
Well,
just stop work, stop work.
Well, it is so in the writing of the stopping work, which is done by the assemblies. Do they have the capacity to prevent that person from continuing the construction? And that's where the argument is something we all have to discuss. Do the assemblies have the capacity? Because you don't find this in the less.
Why do they say produce permit?
They provide a permit, so they should be able to know.
So they should know that stop work. You don't have.
You don't have or stop work and don't build. And it's just maybe public service in a language that has stayed over the years. But sometimes maybe the person might have acquired a permit before. Because of records, you want to give the person an opportunity to provide something. So maybe it's something that has stayed, and we should be following up. Because if you tell him to stop and you don't stop him, he'll be there tomorrow. He'll be there tomorrow next. And the question that often public asks is, you looked at me, I built, I roofed, then now suddenly you want to stand there with a grader. And I've personally witnessed demolitions before. If you're a public officer and you are involved, it's disheartening because you see people's homes come down. And this particular developer or somebody we warned and warned and warned and warned. But in the day of demolition, he looked like the victim. And the government agency looked like it was a very harsh. So if we have the capacity, and this is an advice to the assemblies, we should be able to prevent you at the construction stage. Let him stop as much as he can until he has the right documentation. The argument then comes back to Lands Commission. If your processes are long and drawn out, then people are not patient enough to get the documentation before they go and develop it.
When we come back, I want to find out why is the need to hire land guards to protect lands, and it's become rampant and rife, and some land guards are literally a law unto themselves. What's this great need that I can't just buy my land, go and come back in a year's time and come and start developing? Don't go. Well, thank you very much for staying. And I said I'll be giving you the numbers very soon for you to join. But I just want to find out, what is this insatiable need to hire macho men to look after? Sometimes it's just a 70 by 70, maybe 100 by 100 feet plot, and you have the whole militia there guarding. Where did we get that from?
If you look at our laws and you look at, we've never known anything as land guards as an identified group. The first time we start discussing land guards or land guardism is in the land policy in 1999, when I'm sure policymakers started identifying that this may be a problem. So we need to have policies that would prevent this from happening. And it stems from insecurity of tenure and people's uncertainty about ownership. I always say, when you see people, and I've been following JoyNews recently, where some issues have happened, unfortunate incidents have happened in places. Some of the issues being discussed, I don't think it necessarily relates on land necessarily. The people may come initially that, oh, they are coming to guard land for people. If you finish guarding the land and the land is dispensed of, what then do they do? They would have then just got some authority in that area to start acting in other ways. The view is that land guardism is because of insecurity. So it doesn't happen in your town. It doesn't happen in my small village somewhere in time. Because why would people come and guard land there? Land is in abundance. There's no fight over it. The value itself may not be too high to attract that kind of money, because you need to guard it to be able to have it. So it is the urban phenomenon. It's urbanization. It is the way our land resources keep depleting. It is the struggle to be in a capital city that is expanding, that is feeding that in. And if you hear towns, I've heard unfortunate incidents at Kaswa, I've heard unfortunate, it's because they are periphery towns that have suddenly become an area where people want to live in. So now there's a certain wrestling for it. And at the bottom is interfamily disputes and intra-family disputes. That's where the bigger problem is. In areas where there are no disputes, who fights over land? I've given it to you. You come 5 years later, the land is marked, it's yours. Why would you protect it? But you protect it because there's a fear that if you leave it and you go, the next time you come, somebody would have developed. So it's just a state, what we call it, there are indiscipline in a land market, where people cannot trust public institutions to protect what they have.
Would you say double sales as well? So
it's indiscipline. Indiscipline is from those who are assigning, those who own it. First of all, if there's a dispute between I and you are fighting over who is the chief of a Dumasa. You're a rival chief, you're a rival chief. I start signing documents, you start signing documents. It sets a certain problem because my records are not your records. Your records are not my records. So you've sold, I've also sold. That's one. Secondly, if you and a neighboring chief start having a certain misunderstanding of a particular area, you assign, he also assigns. So the same parcel of land, I have a document, you also have a document. So that's where the problem comes. And so the double sales will stand. It might also be that the chief before you sold it to me in 1980. I've never come to develop the land, but maybe I've registered it somewhere. Or I've said I'll come and do it later. You come, the land is bare, you believe it's available, and you also assign it to somebody. So double sales sometimes is not even with malice, but it is because there's some lack of records, and therefore we go and buy. So the way to resolve it, confidence in public institutions, because when a land dispute starts, where do people go first? They go and report at a police station in that area. We should ask ourselves, do those police stations have the capacity to deal with the situation? If you go and report there, can they stop whatever is happening and refer to the right quarters? There's a collaboration between Lands Commission and the police where they come and do searches. Lands Commission has a responsibility to do those searches quickly so that they can take a decision. But even besides the documentation, what is happening on the ground? If somebody is wrestling or is threatening somebody, the crimes that he's committing have moved away from land garrison. It can be trespass. It's a civil case. It can be threat of life, threat of death. So those is now moved away from the land administration to a social issue that we have to deal with. So that's how I see it playing out all over Accra. So you find that some places are fairly peaceful. The same Accra, same urbanization pressure, but it's peaceful because the headship is known. There's no dispute. There's no possibility of giving more than one grant. If there's youth in that area, the youth know that they are definitely working for one particular traditional area. But once there's some confusion and splits in that family, then we are set for confusion.
Before I go to the phones, you're talking about you have a proposed plan.
Yes.
You send it for Gazette. Now, you see, sometimes the proposed plan includes, maybe the plan came, the village started before the plan came.
Yes.
So there are houses.
Yes.
So
yes.
How do you incorporate the houses that are already?
So they call it like as-built. It's there already. Planners never want to disrupt the social life of people. So it will keep those structures in the way they are, and then make sure that in incorporating the plan, they are not disrupting the traditional area. There are areas I want to set examples of places where the town has grown and the villages have stayed, because the planners have identified that this, in certain parts of this world, it's even a tourist attraction where you have villages there and the town growing around it. So the whole idea of planning is not to disrupt your life. It is to ensure that it plans around that life, making provision for all the other things such as a police station. And in fact, there's something that I often suggest. If you do a plan and you have an area for, say, police station, you advise that it would be nice to do a documentation covering it. And if it's a Ghana Police Service you want to hand it over to, you hand it over to them formally so that that documentation is registered somewhere. Once you don't do that, there's a temptation for a generation to come up later and say, oh, land is finished, so let's cut it out. So it should be a complete process, not just to do the plan, but ensure that if it's an open space, make sure that it's some organization that is running a good open space, or you all know it's an open space and you have cleared it, so kids can play, there are parks there, so people can then obey the rules.
0302 211 691 0302 211 691 or 692. Give us a call. What's your land complication? And I'm sure we'll definitely get you an answer before you go. 0302 211 691 to 692. Keep your calls coming in. As a landowner, I mean, are there any laws? I mean, where do you, I mean, in my side, say if you buy my land within a year, you have to develop.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm taking my thing back.
Yes.
So I keep telling them, look, if you're not ready, take your time, because there's land. I mean, can you take me to court and say, no, you're being too harsh, and that give me 2 years or give me 3 years?
The land transaction will have been covered by, it's a contract between you and the person buying. And Ghanaians are encouraged to read. What we call the indenture has what we call covenants and clauses that binds both parties. So as a private contract, you can enforce it against the person. If I come to Dumasa and I think within 1 year I can't develop, can I negotiate with you and say, oh, can you amend that your clause? If you can amend it, I join. If I cannot, maybe I might go somewhere I feel. So it's clauses and it's governed by law. There's a conveyancing decree that tells us generally what we should do, but there are other clauses that you privately can place in it.
I mean, sorry to personalize this, but that's all. I mean, again, I don't want it's a home prison walls in my village. So if you're going to build a wall, 3 feet is the maximum I allow. Can you tell me that no?
No,
I don't want.
No, because if it's a covenant in a lease and I sign to it, I am bound by that, and you're also bound by that. So I can say, Nana, oh, me, I write 4 feet. We have to agree as parties, and once we agree and we sign, it's binding to us. I cannot sign it, later come and tell you, Nana, that, oh, no, I disagree. I cannot say that. I have to be bound by the agreement as we've reached it, yes.
Who do we have on the phone? Come again. Hello, John from Isawam. Hello, John.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, John. Let me hear you.
I want to find out.
John, your line is going.
Hello?
Yeah, you wanted to find out about what?
Yes, sir.
Oops, John, your reception is quite bad. Okay, let's go to another John in Accra. Hello, John seems to have problems with their line. Hello, John in Accra.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Good, John, let me hear you. Talk to me.
I'm saying that, assuming that we buy land from these estate developers, how secure is the land document?
Okay.
How
secure is our land document?
Okay.
When we buy from this estate, are we supposed to register again?
Okay, so we've got that. So John in Accra, you probably, let me. So John in Accra wants to know how secure.
Estates.
Have I got any more callers? Bernard? Hello, Bernard in Takrady.
Yes, Nana, good evening.
Good evening, Bernard.
In fact, I'm very happy at the way your guest is explaining the issue. And I think you need to pay much attention to him and the kind of solution he provides. Yes, hello? Yes, I'm saying that I like the way your guest is explaining the issue. Yes. I think you need to pay much attention to him, the kind of solutions he's prescribing, for this land issue. I think over the years we've used this, if you like, police militia approach, and it is not working. So you made mention of the fact that we have issues with our chieftaincy, family issues and so on. I think we have to resolve that, because he cited examples that, the same Accra, the same data Accra, in some places are people, others are not. So it tells you that there are some underlying issues over the years we've neglected, and we just dance around the issues and say that let's send police there. No, the police cannot be there 247. the whole year. No, the critical issues about chieftaincy and some, you have to sit down and resolve it.
I agree with you. Let me go to Eric in Accra. Hello, Eric.
Hello?
Eric.
Yeah, good evening, Nana. Yeah. Nana, my question is, I got a land for one of the hills. Yes. Yeah, hello, Nana, yes. Hello?
I can hear you.
Yeah, my question is, I got a land for one of the estate developers, but I want to find out from the gentleman over there whether I can go to Land Commission to register the land.
Okay, so you want to find out if you can register the land. Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we'll take one more question and then we'll go through it before we take a set of calls. Okay, so then no call this.
Okay. So I'll start with John in Accra. And he was talking about estate developers. Let's keep it in our minds that estate developers are like any of us. When they go and acquire lands, they also must do the registration before they are assigned to you. What happens most times is that the estate developers have good intentions, but they say, oh, we are acquiring it, we'll register it later. If some litigation happens later between them and their grantor, the ripple effect is for the buyers. So I always say, don't look at the developer, look at the documentation. When he gives you a documentation, check with the appropriate quarters. Be sure he has also registered his before you take off. Don't assume that because he's a developer, he has all his documentation right, because it's not so in all cases.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. And Bernard in Takrade, I like the fact that he encourages the solutions we prefer. I think the more we resolve the intrafamily issues, the more better we set ourselves. And Eric in Accra also asked the estate developers issue. And I'm encouraging him, if you have documentation, come do a search, be sure the documentation is right before you go ahead and do your papers. Don't assume, because people often assume, oh, he says he's an estate developer. So the assumption is that he has the right documentation.
But there's this assumption that estate development lands haven't got litigation.
Yes, because it's an assumption that we shouldn't keep following on. Now there are people, self-styled estate developers all over Accra. Some do the right thing, but the assumption shouldn't be that because he's an estate developer. It's not the person or the company he has, it is the documentation. So he says he wants to sell, he gives you a site plan, do a search, be sure that what he's assigning, he has registration, then you can proceed. You can proceed on
so 0302 211 691 and 692, 0302 211 691 or 692. Keep your questions coming and we will try and answer them for you. Now, what will be the process in, getting back state land if there's a patch of state land next door which doesn't ever seem to get used?
Well, you have to apply to the Lands Commission, right? It would have gone through a certain acquisition process. So you apply to the Lands Commission.
Let's go to Eric in Kaswa. Hello, Eric in Kaswa.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes, Eric.
Good evening.
Good evening. Let me hear you.
Please, I want to contribute I want to ask a question.
Good. Let me hear your question.
I want to ask the man, if you have bought a land and you have registered a land, after some years, can somebody who buy the same land and register it?
Okay, so we'll get that. Let's go to Koforidua. Hello, Ken. Ken in Koforidua.
No, this is Sam from Jumapo.
Oh, Sam in Jumapo. Whoa. Hello, yeah. Sam in Jumapo.
From Koforidua, yes. Yes. This is Sam. Now in Jumapo village.
Production, can you turn up the sound for us a bit?
Yeah. Well, my question is, I bought the land about 15 years ago.
Okay.
I walled the land, put on a security house.
What, have we lost Sam? Okay. Can you get production to turn up this volume 2 for us? Okay, who's my next caller? Hello, Calvin. Okay, we're back to studio. I think we dropped the call.
Okay. I think the double registration he was talking about, it shouldn't be possible for people to have lands registered twice. since it's a public agency, and if you look at how the registration process is done, it's the same sheet of paper on which records are kept. So if I assign to you and somebody else assigns to somebody else, it shouldn't be possible for us to have two registrations on the same line. It shouldn't be possible. However, there are few cases where, based on technical errors with site plans and some issues, Lands Commission has made had some few challenges in registration. All those ones have been rectified subsequently, where we can either seek to make the correction of the coordinates and all that. So double registration, let me assure him, it shouldn't be possible. In few cases where that has happened because of some technical challenge, Lands Commission is quick to rectify it, and the law says he who comes to register first will take priority. So that's how Lands Commission views it. That's what the law says. And then for some in Jampo, he was talking about the land where he's walled with a security man. I can hazard a guess that he's kept it for years, and maybe somebody has appeared and is having a certain claim. If that is the case, then he should have looked at registration in addition to the fiscal possession, rather than looking only at the fiscal possession if he's not done the registration as it were. So.
Okay, let me go to Techiman and speak to Sylvester. Hello, Sylvester. Sylvester.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, let me hear you.
Yeah, Nana, I'm Sylvester.
Yes.
I was listening to a program on Adum. Yeah, I was listening to a program at Adum TV. Case. Then the lawyer said that if you sell a land to somebody, that means that the land does not belong to you again. Yes. So there's no way that you can sell it to another person. And I want to ask, does the law make a provision for any person who sell land twice to two people, like you have sell it to somebody and then you have sell the same land to another person too? Does the law have punishment for those who do that?
Okay, we'll put the question. Let's go to Accra and speak to Eric. Hello, Eric.
Hello?
Hello, Eric. What's your question?
Hello, yeah. Nana, Eric again. The question is that what I wanted... Hello, yeah, Nana?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah, Eric again. My question is, I got the land already, I paid for it, and I have my papers, including the site plan. But what I want to know is, can I go to lands, then register the land in my name again?
Okay, I'll answer that. Let's go to Anya and speak to Yao Edum. Hello, Yao.
Hello.
Hello, Yao Edum. Let me hear you.
My name is Yao Edum. I'm calling from Anya.
Yeah.
Find out. No, I have a plot of land. I have a plot of land at Amasam.
Okay.
Okay. And somebody has a coach on the land. I went to Amasam. I made a route of the treatment plot. I did that thing. For about 2 months now, when I was told it's on the junior. I don't know how long I don't know what I should do. What should I do?
Okay, line was a bit crackling, but let's speak to Jerry in Tadi. Hello, Jerry. Jerry in Takrady.
Yeah.
Jerry, what's your question?
My question is, before I bought a land in Takrady area, before I bought a land in the Adembra, I went to the land commission to do a search on the land. I was told the land is clear. So I went ahead, paid an amount of money to the team. So I went after paying the money, I went to the surveyor department. I think they were supposed to take the area. I went there, they did it for me, everything was complete. I went back to the land commission to register the land. I went there, I was told somebody has his name on the place, on the land. So I was asking them, how can that be possible? Because I was thinking it was, you have to, at least, surveyors have to take the area before you can get those documents, then go ahead and then register. They couldn't get any better explanation to me. So I want to ask the man over there whether there's anything I can do about this, because up to now I haven't been able to register the land.
Okay, thank you very much, Jerry.
Okay, so I'll start with Jerry's problem. The thing is that if you come and do a search with us, the search is time bound. Today's search results may not be the same as tomorrow's search results, because every day people are submitting documents for registration with the commission. So what I can foresee happened in his case was that at the time he did the search, his same grantors, and you notice from Jerry's conversation, which is a big problem we have, he's not asking his grantors if they've ever given the land to somebody else. Now the focus becomes the institution, because as if Lands Commission has misled him. What he needs to do is ask and do a search. You get the details of that transaction. If he gets the details of that transaction, he might suggest to him, this was given by, if it's not the same chief, by some other rival chief or somebody, then they can then dispute that grant. But his problem, what he can do, he's done a new search, he has a search results. Take it to your grantors and tell them, hey, this land you sold to me, Mr. X has registered it, and then tackle it with them. What they do, people don't want to confront their grantors. They rather want to confront the public institution. And my suggestion to him is that he just check with his grantors. If they are not the same people who gave the land to the other party, it will be helpful for us to resolve his issue. For Eric, he said he's paid the land, he has a site plan and a document, and he's assuming that is registration. That's why he says, then I'll go back to Lands Commission to register. Please, Eric, you are encouraged. Come and do a registration. What you have is just what we call, popularly called an indenture, a contract between the landowner and yourself. And if you keep it in your bosom, it's not in the records of the Lands Commission. If somebody else comes to do a search on that same parcel of land, your name will not appear. So you are encouraged, after you finish the transaction, come and do the registration so that your name will be in public records and nobody else can register. So that's the advice to him. Sylvester said that the lawyer had said if you've sold to somebody, it's a simple basic rule in law, nemo that if you sell something, you cannot sell it again, at least for the period for which the lease lasts. Until that period expires, you have no control over it. He went on to say that, so is there a provision for those who sell double sale? Yes. What they would have done is they would have either breached the contract between the parties, or they would have engaged in fraud or some misrepresentation or some lie. There are other ways by which you can litigate with them over that. So if somebody sells the land 2 times, he's not scot-free. There are other aspects of the law that can take care of that person. So
were there other questions there? Or?
Yes, and there was someone which had a gentleman had encroachment issues. He said he had reported it to, because the line was fuzzy, I wasn't sure who he had reported to. But the first thing, the way to stop an encroacher usually is show your proof of title. And then if that encroacher is not building with title, the assembly, the planning authority at the assembly, the engineers department will be the first point of call. Because
but they never move.
Yes, but that's where, so the discussion should be the nature of the resourcing of those assemblies. Because sometimes if you go there, it will be interesting to know how much money is invested in their mobility, in the, because assemblies would need to have demolition trucks, would need to have pickups to go around, and they have vast areas of control. So the issue is a resource problem. There are very qualified professionals there who may be willing to work on a day-to-day basis, but what resource is devoted to development control is a big issue. And therefore, that's something we need to discuss as a nation, to resource them.
You see, sometimes, you see, I know you keep saying resource. Yes. Sometimes just absolute lack of will to just move from the desk,
yes,
to go and they
site.
seem so helpless. But, you see a building coming up, you know it's wrong, you report, you prove, you go and ask them, is there a planning permit? No, they don't have permit,
but they are still
there.
And I think that's where assemblies like the Greater Accra AMA thought wise and did what they call the sub-metros, because they were believing that those sub-metros will now be closer to the action, so they can deal with the problems. And if all assemblies could look at breaking down their areas into smaller units, where they have units heads there, it's easier Because I've noticed that working with AMA for a while, that they have a certain structure where it helps. It might not solve all the problem, but once you are closer to the action, where you have sub-metros or sub-assemblies or sub-districts, then it will be easier for you to deal with issues.
Can you sue an assembly if there's a building coming up, there's no permit?
It's been done. It's been done. There are a few citizens in Ghana. We are not serial litigants, but there are popular cases, some in Teshinongwa, where a famous lawyer decided that no, this should not happen in the assembly. They sued the assembly, and the court gave instructions and directions that this assembly should do its work in preventing the. So we can. It's only that it will be at your cost, and it's legal fees and all that. So sometimes people are shy away from that, but as a citizen, you have a right to do so.
I think we need to sue. There's an assembly that we need to sue. But it's been educative. It's been extremely helpful. And these land issues, just like we bring Dr. Akaman every now and then do health issues, we should be bringing this land matters, and then getting our education has been good. But to all the people, if you're watching us in Takwa, watch out this weekend. I'm going to be in Takwa, and so congratulations to Dr. Irenchi, proprietor of Hotel The Gilder. He served his term as a Men's Fellowship President and he's retiring. So I'll be there to grace the occasion. So congratulations, Dr. Irenchi of Hotel The Gilder and all the people of Takwa. And thank you very much to our in-house land consultant that I'm going to poach and send to Edumasa very soon. But thank you for watching and have a brilliant, brilliant week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.